Can a building fill you with feelings of dread without ever stepping foot inside its walls? Many would say that today's haunted location does just that, especially as reports state that the number of deaths that have occurred here is between 50 to 60,000. Hey there, dissectors. Today we're going to take a look at a place where the dead wander aimlessly throughout the many dark hallways and even the grounds of the property. Seemingly trapped with their feelings of desperation and suffering, the ghosts of Waverly Hills Sanatorium might be dead, but they are far from being forgotten. Now, experts claim that there are two main kinds of haunting. There is the residual type, where it would appear that the entity is trapped in a recording of their final moments, like on a constant loop. The other is called an intelligent haunting, where a spirit can move objects and communicate with the living. Not sure which of those two you would find more disturbing, but Waverly Hills has both kinds. So why are the spirits so attracted to this place? Well, my friends, that might have a lot to do with the history of what went down and the sad stories of those who worked and lived here. It opened its doors on July 26, 1910, as a place to treat patients with tuberculosis, also known as consumption. At its peak, the disease is said to have killed 1 in 7 people. Symptoms would be tiredness, lack of appetite, a terrible, persistent cough, which more often than not produced blood, night sweats and swollen limbs. Sounds truly awful. It seemed the administrators were feeling a lot of pressure at this time too, with not knowing where to put people. The children's pavilion was a serious issue, for example. Here you would find the sick children who were struggling with the illness, sharing quarters with the children of sick patients, who when they entered the ward would be healthy, but sadly didn't stay that way. Maybe not realising just how bad things were going to get. Originally, the hospital could only house about 40 people, but by 1926 it expanded to house around 500 patients. Crazy thing is, while the building work was taking place, it was still an active hospital with patients being relocated to tents outside. Now this might seem harsh, but when you take into account the way that people were treated for the condition, it might seem like a walk in the park. You see, treatments included getting plenty of sunshine and fresh air, and in the more desperate times, surgery. This could be the removal of up to 7 ribs, as they believed that this would make it easier to breathe, or even inserting balloons in the lungs filled with air to expand them. Well, thankfully, medicine has improved in leaps and bounds since then. Death was a very common visitor though, with bodies having to be disposed of on a daily basis. The staff didn't want to upset the patients, so what was the answer to this dilemma? Well, it was a body chute originally meant for personal access. The 537-foot tunnel, which garnered the name the Death Tunnel, led to Dixie Highway. Today this area has many unexplained incidents reported, which is unsurprising. In 1943, streptomycin was introduced and used with other antibiotics to treat the illness. Suddenly, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. No pun intended. Tuberculosis numbers started to decline, but this left the hospital no longer being needed for its original purpose. By 1961, Waverly Hills Sanatorium was renamed and became Woodhaven Geriatrics Hospital, though many would say it was an insane asylum. This was also shut down in 1981 after allegations of patient abuse. For about 20 years, the property remained empty, except for the entities that decided to stick around. Many tried to purchase the building, but nothing ever came to fruition until 2001. Now, the hauntings that have been reported are vast. People have witnessed cold spots, slamming doors, sinister shadows, and disembodied voices. But one of the most disturbing things, I believe, is that some visitors have reported seeing themselves, or those they know, act totally out of character. Almost like for a small period of time they become possessed by an evil entity that made them act out of character. For example, someone who totally loves animals suddenly attacking a cat or a dog. To me, that would be very upsetting to witness, but also experience firsthand. So let's delve deeper into those said to haunt Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and where better to start than with an entity nicknamed the Creeper. Now this spirit is unusual to say the least, as it comes off as a shadow person, which are found throughout the property, but it doesn't act like expected. People who have witnessed it have been left terrified and engulfed in a feeling of dread. This entity not only crawls along the floor like a snake, but also slithers up the walls and across the ceiling like it's hunting its prey, and that prey is you. Many believe it to be a demon or inhuman entity. I personally don't believe in demons as often depicted. To me, it's a very twisted human spirit who either was a nasty piece of work while alive or became angry and bitter in death. It is often believed that dark spirits are drawn to places where death and sorrow has left a mark and feed off the energy left behind. Safe to say, the creeper is certainly not an entity you want to encounter if you visit here. As I mentioned earlier, shadow people are seen throughout the property. They seem to resemble people, but with no distinguishing features like race, sex, age, etc. You may see them lurking in corners or in your peripheral view. There are so many at Waverly Hills Sanatorium that they've been caught on film both inside and on the grounds outside. One popular question is whether shadow people mean any harm. Some researchers believe that they take on the dark form as it's the closest to the physical shape of when they were alive, whereas others feel they are spirits with a darker purpose, as people feel a sense of foreboding when in the presence of one. Is it the body's way of warning us to possible danger? What do you guys believe? Do you think they mean harm? Or are they ghostly figures that are lost somewhere along the way? Let me know in the comments. Another well-documented haunting at Waverly Hills Sanatorium comes from the suicides of 2 nurses. One apparently jumped to her death from room 502, which was used as a nurse's station, thought to have been brought on by excessive stress at work. The other young nurse was only 29 when she died. She became filled with shame and dread after discovering she was pregnant while being unmarried. Back then, this was something that not only brought shame upon yourself, but also your family. Stupid as that might seem nowadays, but so many women suffered and were treated horrifically for getting pregnant. There are rumours that she was not only pregnant, but also having an affair with the hospital's owner and contracted tuberculosis. Whatever the real reason for the lead up to her death, she sadly hung herself from a light fixture in the same area as the other nurse. Visitors to Waverly Hills have seen the ghostly figures of nurses going about their day, with some guests even having an overwhelming urge to jump out of the window. Despair was something felt by many of the people who were treated here. From feelings of loneliness, horror and grief, it is no surprise that a ghostly woman haunts the grounds who leaves visitors distraught. You see, she's seen wandering the lonely corridors, pleading for help. Her appearance is harrowing as she shows you her slashed, bleeding wrists and feet. Many over the years have tried to help, but as soon as they get close, she turns away screaming as if in fear. It seems that this poor woman is another victim of the abuse that happened here over the years. But not all stories are quite so sad. I mentioned earlier about the ward for children that was inside the hospital. Well, as you might expect, some of the young ones never left. There are reports of a little girl who is seen running up and down the 3rd floor hallways, and another of a young boy called Timmy. Now, Timmy apparently spends most of his time looking for someone to play with. Thought to be aged between 6 and 7 years old, visitors often bring him gifts of toys and balls to play with. This seems to be greatly appreciated by the young spirit, as he has interacted with guests many times, rolling a ball backwards and forwards. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is certainly a dwelling that holds your imagination and sends shivers down the spine. From the film Spooked, which didn't do very well sadly in the theatres, to the much loved television show Supernatural, which did a storyline on the place in season 11. This property certainly grabs your attention. When Tina and Charlie Mattingly purchased the building in 2001 for $230,000, there were plans to transform it into a hotel. These ideas have been scrapped now, and instead they do tours to raise money for historical maintenance instead. Guided tours of the building are available starting at $25 per person for a 2-hour tour, all the way up to an overnight experience, which is a lot more pricey. Please note that children are not allowed, as they might find it disturbing. You can book your visit through Waverly Hills' website and experience the thrills for yourself. This place is certainly not for the faint of heart.